okay. If your white butt okay.
Sit your $5 ass down.
Lay your ass down. Thank you, Rita. Sit down.
I know. Look at that white goat. Oh, they are so cute. Oh, look, there's a black one.
Black one?
Because I'm black?
I'm gonna say what needs to be said. Yeah, my little homie got his snot box rocked. Yeah, it hurt. Yeah, he got his TV turned off. Yeah, it hurt. Yeah, he did. But you know what though? Part of me is to blame, and part of you is to blame. Yo, I'm so sick and tired because I shouldn't have had to put shit so colorful for y'all to recognize that we was killing us on the battlefield. It was us killing us, not them. Yeah, it hurt. Yeah, he got his TV turned off. Yeah, it hurt.
For weeks now, we've been faced with so much uncertainty coming from President Trump. Each day brings new tariff threats. Now, President Trump is threatening tariffs on steel and aluminum. He's pointing his finger at dairy and lumber, shifting timelines, different excuses, chaos and confusion. It's hurting workers, it's hurting businesses, it's hurting investments, and it's hurting families on both sides of the border. It needs to end. That's why I've been crystal clear. Until these tariffs are off the table, until the threat of tariffs is gone for good, Ontario will not relent. We will not back down, pausing some tariffs, making last-minute exemptions.
Let's
go! It won't cut it. We need to end the chaos once and for all. We need to sit down, work together, and land a fair deal. A deal that gives businesses the confidence to invest. A deal that gives workers the security they need and deserve. Until then, Ontario will keep up the fight. We will apply maximum pressure to maximize our leverage. That's why today we're moving forward with a 25% surcharge on electricity exports. For the 1.5 million American homes and businesses that Ontario powers, homes and businesses in Minnesota, Michigan, and New York. This surcharge will cost families and businesses in these states up to $400,000 each and every single day. On an average, this will add around $100 per month to the bills of hardworking Americans. Let me be clear, I will not hesitate to increase this charge. If necessary, if the United States escalates, I will not hesitate to shut the electricity off completely. Believe me when I say I do not want to do this. I feel terrible for the American people because it's not the American people who started this trade war. It's one person who's responsible. That's President Trump. I'd rather be working together. I want to sell the U.S. more energy, more electricity, more critical minerals. I want to make Canada and the United States the richest, most successful, safest, most secure two countries on the planet. But as Premier, my number one job is to protect the people of Ontario and in hand protect the people of Canada. I will do whatever it takes. I will fight like I've never fought before to protect Ontario. Friends, none of this makes sense. Costly tariffs against your closest friends and allies do not make sense. The U.S. markets have lost trillions in value. Companies are second-guessing investments into the American economy. American workers' jobs are at risk as we speak right now. Cost of hardworking American families will only go up. It doesn't have to be this way. We are stronger when we work together. I hope we can get back to working together, creating jobs, growing our economies, lowering costs for families in both countries. We don't get there by easing up. We will remain strong. We will be relentless. We will do whatever it takes to protect Ontario.
In addition to these new retaliatory tariffs from China, Canada's tariffs on the U.S. are still in place. Last week, it put a 25% levy on things like beer, fruit and vegetables, shoes, cosmetics, and more. And today, Ontario starts charging a 25% surcharge on electricity.
And saying no after they've said yes to just about everybody else. Yes to Omar Khadr. Yes to somebody running a minister's Twitter account, $100,000. Yes to his pals when they want to take a vacation in the Caribbean. They're saying yes to everybody, but they're telling those who gave their country all they have that they're asking for too much. That is shameful. The Conservatives will hold them to account for that every time.
Right Honourable Prime Minister. I will take no lessons from the members opposite on dealing with veterans. For 10 years, that party wrapped themselves in the flag every chance they got.
Order. Order. Let's have some adult behavior in the House, please. The Right Honourable Prime Minister has the floor.
For 10 years, the Conservative government cut veteran services, cut Frontlines offices, shut down 9 veteran service centres across the country, nickel and dime the veterans while using them for photo ops, wrapping themselves in the flag every chance they get. It was shameful. We have restored respect to veterans. We're investing in benefits. We're reopening closed offices. We're supporting their families. We're doing right what for 10 years they did wrong.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
That is so patently false, Mr. Speaker. It was this government that increased support for veterans by 35%. It was our last veterans minister that ended the court process and started settlement proceedings. That this Prime Minister promised during an election campaign that they would never have to go back to court. And then he looks a hero in the eye and tells them no. That's shameful, Mr. Speaker. And we have to answer for that.
Order. The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs. And that could be arranged. So I would ask members to cooperate and pay attention to the rule against interrupting. The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs has the floor.
I can tell this House, Mr. Speaker, as a Newfoundlander, I've seen a lot of fog. But the pea soup fog of amnesia over on that side of the House is so thick. Let me remind that side of the House of their records for our veterans in 10 years. Let me remind them how they balanced their budgets on the backs of our veterans. Yeah. How they closed offices, how they cut budgets, how they staff, let me tell you, we have developed a pension for life that does right.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Fruit and vegetables, shoes, cosmetics, and more. And today, Ontario starts charging a 25% surcharge on electricity to 3 U.S. states, Minnesota, Michigan, and New York. The tariff war and opposition to President Trump has actually unified Canadians. Listen to these remarks from Mark Carney, who is expected to be Canada's next prime minister. He was just elected to head the Liberal Party yesterday, soon potentially to be sworn in as PM.
The Canadian government has rightly retaliated and is rightly retaliating with our own tariffs that will have maximum impact in the United States and minimum impact here in Canada. And my government will keep our tariffs on until the Americans show us respect.
Let's discuss with Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, which is the province that started to impose that surcharge on 1.5 million homes and businesses in the United States. He also ordered all U.S. alcohol to be removed from Ontario shelves. Premier, thank you so much for sharing part of the afternoon with us. What do you hope to achieve with this surcharge? What needs to happen for you to remove it?
Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me on, Boris. And I start off every interview with telling Americans that Canadians love Americans. I love Americans. It's one person that's caused this problem, and that's President Trump. As he is putting tariffs on us, even if he says he's putting it on hold, there's still 60% of goods that are crossing the borders that will be tariffed, and it's hurting both economies. It's hurting the American economy. It's hurting the Canadian economy. Uncertainty is what people don't like hearing in general life, not to mention the markets are tumbling, and investors from around the world are looking twice at America and Canada to invest in. There's no reason for a recession. I call it the self-made Donald Trump recession. He ran on a mandate to lower prices, to make sure we didn't have inflation, to create more jobs, and it's backfired. So let's sit down at the table and let's start working on a new USMCA deal. Even though President Trump said it was the greatest deal he's ever made, nothing's changed, so I guess it's not the greatest deal now.
His argument would be that he's trying to remake the American economy, to produce more goods that are currently imported into the U.S. here at home. With these electricity surcharges, you say that the move is designed to protect your province. The administration, if they see it as an escalation and they reciprocate with tariffs on lumber, steel, and dairy, ultimately, doesn't that hurt your constituents?
No, we're looking at negotiating through strength. If he cuts off the lumber or puts a tariff, do you know whose costs are going up? It's the American people that want to buy a home. They're going to pay more for their home, or steel that they need, or aluminum that is only 16% of aluminum's manufactured in the U.S. They rely on over 60% aluminum to come down there for their goods. High-grade nickel coming out of Ontario. That 50% of the high-grade nickel for your military, aerospace, and manufacturing comes from Ontario. And the list keeps going on and on and on, not to mention the 4.3 million barrels of crude oil that we ship down every single day. So I believe in building an AMCAN fortress. Let's make sure that we focus on having the two greatest countries in the world, the most prosperous, the richest, the safest. The problem's not Canada, it's China right now. And he has to keep an eye on China.
I do want to ask you about the question of fairness, and specifically on one claim, because I've heard it from Trump and a number of officials in his administration, most recently Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. He argues that Canada has a 255% tariff on dairy imports. The administration has cited that over and over again. Is that number accurate? Do you think it's fair for American dairy farmers?
Well, what I'd like to do is sit down and discuss these issues with them at a USMCA table. What I will tell you this, if we take the 4.3 million barrels a day that we ship down there to keep your economy going off the balance sheet, The U.S. has a $56 billion surplus, a trade surplus with Canada. I'm okay with that. That's fine. Things were going fine. Everything was moving forward. Market was going up a little bit. Everyone was optimistic. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he wants to attack his closest neighbor and ally. And his number I call their number one customer. You don't attack your number one customer and expect the results that he thought were going to happen. Protectionism does not work, especially between Canada and the U.S. Maybe you should take a page out of Ronald Reagan's book.
Premier, I do want to ask you about Mark Carney. He is in line to become the next prime minister. We saw Justin Trudeau's relationship with Trump evolve and then ultimately degrade. How do you think Mark Carney is going to approach President Trump?
Well, Mr. Carney is a very, very bright individual, and it's up to Mr. Carney to build that relationship with President Trump. They're both bright people. Let's make no mistake about it. Agree or disagree with President Trump. He understands finances. So does Mark Carney, and so do I. We're business people. And if we sit down around the table, we can resolve the problem and make sure that both countries prosper, like the likes of which this country's never seen or the likes of which the U.S. has never seen if we work together.
Premier Doug Ford, we appreciate you joining us and sharing your point of view.
Thank you so much, and God bless America and God bless Canada. Thank you so much.
Best friends for never?
The Americans want our resources, our water, our land, our country. If they succeeded, they would destroy our way of life. We didn't ask for this fight. We didn't ask for this fight. The Canadians are always ready when someone else drops the gloves. So the Americans, they should make no mistake, in trade as in hockey, Canada will win.
That was Mark Carney, the soon-to-be Canadian Prime Minister. And what you just saw and listened to was the latest example of how a once unbreakable bond between the U.S. and Canada has fractured as President Trump advances his trade war against both Canada and Mexico. Tariffs on Canada are expected to go into effect on April 2nd. My panel is back now. Nia, you know, Canada has it in him. Let's see how he takes it.
Yeah,
as he takes over.
I think that's right. I mean, you saw over the last many weeks Donald Trump talking about Canada as the 51st state, talking about Trudeau as Governor Trudeau. That's become sort of his moniker. And now this is a new person. What's been interesting is that Trump has brought Trudeau's party back to life, right? There was this really sort of resurgent interest in a more conservative party, and now you have in this person somebody who's really benefiting from this fight with Donald Trump. Who knew that America would want to be at war with the Canadians? But apparently it's based on a South Park movie.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so bring us up to speed on that. And if the South Park guys are listening, please come on anytime and,
that was the
and
premise
talk
of
about
that
it.
movie. Was it?
Yeah.
I mean, going to war with Canada, and that's essentially, you know, what's interesting is how the rhetoric also from the new incoming Canadian Prime Minister, much different than what we're seeing from, you know, our Mexican partners, Claudia Sheinbaum, the way she has approached Donald Trump, which is
true.
A little bit, you know, obviously what we've seen other leaders do, try to softer rhetoric, if you will. This is, we're going right at him. But Nia's absolutely right. The domestic politics in Canada are absolutely fascinating. It has led to this nationalistic fervor within Canada that has boosted the Trudeau's party and potentially could ultimately undercut what Donald Trump wants to achieve here. But if he's talking tough, the new incoming leader, on Donald Trump, I doubt Donald Trump is going to back off. He wants people to talk nicely to him for him to back off, but the rhetoric will only be ratcheted up.
Inside.
I'm going to say what needs to be said. Yeah, my little homie got his snot box rocked. Yeah, it hurt. Yeah, he got his TV turned off. Yeah, it hurt. Yeah, he did. But you know what, though? Part of me is to blame, and part of you is to blame. Yo, I'm so sick and tired because I shouldn't have had to put shit so colorful for y'all to recognize that we was killing us on the battlefield. It was us killing us, not them. Yeah, it hurt. Yeah, he got his TV turned off. Yeah, it hurt.
U.S. tariffs. Effective today, Ontario will apply a 25% surcharge on all energy exports to the United States. The Ontario government says this charge will add an average of $100 per month to American bills and bring in about $300,000 to $400,000 in revenue per day for Ontario. The surcharge will affect energy consumers from Michigan, Minnesota, and New York, and Premier Ford says that 25% surcharge might just be the start.
We will apply maximum pressure to maximize our leverage. Let me be clear. I will not hesitate to increase this charge. If necessary, if the United States escalates, I will not hesitate to shut the electricity off completely.
Ontario Energy Minister Stephen Lecce joins me now. Minister, welcome back to the show. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
You threatened to do this electricity tariff, and you're going ahead with it. Have you heard anything back from New York, Minnesota, Michigan since making this move official?
Well, the system operators in the U.S. have all said that they're concerned about the move because it affects reliability of the market, and it also could lead to higher prices for Americans, which is exactly the opposite of what President Trump campaigned on. So it's still early, but I think the indications are that this is not something that helps them secure energy, which creates pain and complication for them. It is regretful that we're doing this to American people, but we have no choice given one man's decision to levy an unprecedented and illegal tariff on Canada, from softwood to dairy to manufacturing. Literally, the list goes on. Every day, it's a different sector that he's trying to attack and fundamentally undermine. So if this is necessary, we do this, and 25% is the first step. Keeping in mind, David, we can level this up, meaning if there's another attack,
ratchet it up.
Inside Canadian politics.
Yes.
Let's look a little bit at the U.S.-Canada alliance, the economic alliance. And the bilateral trade is about $2.5 billion in goods and services a day. 400,000 people cross between countries every day. The U.S. has maintained the official presence in Canada since 1833. And I didn't actually realize this, that they share the world's longest undefended border.
Yeah, and it's the bottom line there is that there is a lot of opportunity for Canada to channel this nationalistic fervor into making Americans feel real political pain. I mean, there's no corresponding anti-Canada faction in the U.S. that also wants to get the bit in their teeth and really go sock it to those guys, right? By and large, U.S. consumers just want to see lower prices, a strong economy, and now that we are kind of creating with our own political moves, this new guerrilla faction that's just determined to stop that from happening for our people in order to try to shake loose some kind of change at the top level. The other weird thing about it is just the fact that, like you say, Canada and Mexico are pursuing such different strategies, and you can see Trump react to those in real time, right? Where he is sort of showering praise on Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, meanwhile getting angrier and angrier at Canadian leadership. While supposedly the pretext for all these things is drugs coming over the borders and things like that. So as you say, it's definitely a risky strategy if the goal is to get Trump to back off.
So on that note, now is it's time for our truth sandwich portion of the lunch hour.
I should mention that joining us now is MSNBC senior contributing editor and the founding director of the Race Card Project, Michelle Norris. Michelle, I just got to get your reaction to both what you've seen tonight in terms of these speeches, but also what you've been hearing in terms of your reporting.
Well, just what you were saying about the workers, when you see Elon Musk with that big blinged out red chainsaw, it's not just that they are firing people, that they're doing it in such an ignominious manner. They're doing it with glee.
Yeah.
And it is just wrong in the way that they're doing this. I was struck by a couple of things. I do believe that we're going to see them go after Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
They asked the bank robber, why did you go to the bank? Well, because that's where the money is.
Yeah.
And in order for them to get to these numbers, they're probably going to look at Social Security. And that's an opportunity for the Democrats to message to people. And, is your mom okay?
Mm-hmm.
Is your family okay? I spent a good time texting with people who work with farmers because I decided to focus on one thing. They work with farmers in Minnesota, Illinois, and Iowa, and they were very upset, by this and the tariffs. The farmers are going to get hit very hard in this. They got hit last time in the trade war with China. They barely recovered last time. We're talking about big numbers, hundreds of millions of dollars. Some of the people who are involved in direct-to-consumer farming, organic farming, will.
Many Italian and Greeks have come to Canada over many decades. They've been an integral part of our nation's character ever since. That's why it was so offensive that this Prime Minister compared legitimate refugees and immigrants who have built this country with those who have fought and committed genocidal acts with ISIS. Returning ISIS fighters are not refugees. Why can't the Prime Minister tell the difference?
Honorable Minister of Immigration.
I can assure the leader of the official opposition that we can tell the difference. We are a compassionate country, we're a compassionate government that cares deeply about refugees. We doubled the number of resettled refugees, we almost quadrupled the number of privately sponsored refugees, and we are the party that has...
Having trouble hearing the answer, and I'd ask the member for St. Albert, Edmonton, and others not to be yelling during question period and not to be interrupting. We've had far more than enough of that, and members are going to hear things they don't like, but they're going to have to take it and listen to it. Honorable Minister of Immigration.
Up, meaning if there's another attack or an imposition of another tariff, we can go up from 25% up and down according to our national interest, and to send a message that we're going to stand up for ourselves as Canadians.
Okay, I want to just talk about that because President Trump has said in his executive order slapping the tariffs on Canada, there's a retaliation clause and an escalator clause that if Canada were to hit back, he says he would raise his rates. You're saying you're prepared to do exactly the same thing, that this 25% electricity tax could go up, and I saw the Premier saying that he's willing to shut it off completely if the U.S. escalates. So what's the tipping point for shutting it off? What would their escalation have to get to before you went that far?
We're not there yet, and we don't want to get ahead of ourselves other than recognizing that it's an option on the table. I mean, we're not going to remove that from our negotiating posture with the U.S. We can do that, and we will do that if we must. Currently, we want to work with the U.S. to make clear to them that this 25% surcharge roughly brings in $300,000 to $400,000 a day. Those dollars will be levied and accrued and put back to support Canadian businesses in Ontario manufacturing and families. So we are going to wait and see how the U.S. reacts, keeping in mind we didn't start this trade war. We don't want this war. We'd rather actually be selling more power. I was working on a plan in the fall. You and I talked about this, about actually powering up, like literally building generation, nuclear power to sell into the U.S. and to monetize this incredible commodity for economic good. But in the meantime, we're going to tariff or impose this surcharge at 25%, bring in money for Ontario, put those dollars back into the pockets of our families and businesses taking a haircut from this tariff. And we'll be prepared to react up or down according to what happens in the U.S. If what we want is the president to eliminate the tariff, to use the renegotiated USMCA as the off-ramp to this, what I think is fair to call a crisis and of the markets and confidence for investors, and to end this chaos. So let's use the USMCA to create tariff-free access into both of our economies. If we have to tweak the deal, so be it. Let's get at the negotiating table today, opposed to this erratic behavior that is setting the markets, $3 trillion of economic loss.
Yeah, on the S&P 500 for sure. I mean, the $300,000 to $400,000 a day that you're talking about, you're going to take in. That's on all of the electricity that goes across the border to all three states. So it's about $100 a month, as I understand it, to the end user in terms of a household. $100 isn't nothing, and I'm assuming is that in American dollars or Canadian dollars? I mean, what kind of pain, I guess, you hope that inflicts on the American consumer in terms of motivating them to apply pressure on the president?
I think in isolation, we need a multitude of actions to create pressure. And we're a subnational government. We're the province of Ontario. Yes, we're the largest economic powerhouse in the country, but we can't do this alone. And so the federal government has a critical role to play with respect to export controls and tariffs and international trade policy. So they are leading, and they need to keep leading in this respect and acting. But we have not, as a country, federally, provincially, even municipally, sat back. We've all imposed retaliatory actions to stand up for this country and to send a signal to our American partners or to the Mexican president that we are not going to hope for the best, and we're not going to take him at his word. We've already been burned a few times, and so that's why this policy exists. Plus the LCBO. I mean, let's remind ourselves, the largest alcohol purchaser on earth is the LCBO, $1 billion of investment. The former leader of the House, in Mitch McConnell from Kentucky, who's still a congressional leader, came out opposing the tariff on Canada. The governor of that state came out opposing the tariff. Republicans, Democrats, you're seeing a consensus of people who have the courage to speak up to the president to say this is a ridiculous, unfounded, illegal attack on your largest Democratic trading partner, and thus it needs to be repealed. And that's why we think the renegotiated USMCA is the way to go.
Yeah, Mitch McConnell's the leader of the Senate, just for people back home. Not the leader of the House. Just I don't want to demote former Senator McConnell, who's former leader of the Senate. Look, I want to ask you about comments that your premier made about the premier of Alberta today. He quoted Daniel Smith. This is what Doug Ford said. As Premier Smith said in her comments in the last couple of days, she has the trump card when talking about fossil fuels. Well, a message to Premier Smith. One day you might have to use that trump card and give approval for an export tax. If you want to talk about a trump card, that will instantly change the game. That sounds like the Premier of Ontario is frustrated with the positions of the Premier of Alberta. How should I interpret what Doug Ford said today?
No, I wouldn't interpret it as such. I think actually there's a great sense of cohesion and unification amongst the premiers. They really are working together, different parties, different regions, frankly, different economic interests.
He's trying to get her to agree with the idea of an export tax on oil and gas, isn't he? To drive up the price at the pump. He says that's the trump card that will change the game. It sounds like he's saying to Daniel Smith, you need to think about this.
Well, no, he didn't have to say that. She said it herself. He just simply echoed the message of the Premier of Alberta herself, that is an option, and I'll respect that is her decision for her province to make. But the Premier, I think, is signaling that we all have to use every lever available to us to maximize the pressure on Americans and minimize the impact on Canadians. And that's why he's using the LCBO. It's why he's imposing a $30 billion prohibition on procurement on American companies in the Ontario market alone. $30 billion of business that otherwise could have gone to America. And that, of course, includes the new 25% energy surcharge. It includes critical minerals not being sent into the U.S. markets. All of these will have impact. Maybe in isolation, these one-offs may not change the president's decision or calculus, but together, they are having an impact on the market and on Republican and Democratic decision makers in the South, in the Senate and the House, and at the governor's level. We believe that is the best way to create pressure on their president to change course and to end this unjustified attack on his largest customer and Democratic partner.
No, as many pressure points as possible, it seems to be the strategy. Hit them in as many areas and ways that you can. I just wonder, as a final point, Minister, there is going to be a change in the leadership of the country in a matter of days with Mark Carney's victory Sunday night, and he'll be sworn in at some point this week officially as Prime Minister. What opportunity does that allow for a reset in terms of the relationship with the U.S.? I mean, do you see a change in the Prime Minister's office from Justin Trudeau to Mr. Carney as a helpful thing at this point in time, or more uncertainty in an uncertain time? How do you view it?
Well, I think it's a huge opportunity for Canada to reset relations, yes, with America, but also to reset our domestic economic policy and to zero in on some of the competitive disadvantages we have really imposed on ourselves. The Premier made clear the carbon tax has to be the first thing eliminated to reduce bills for families and businesses and remove the competitive disadvantage relative to America. Because as you know, David, capital will flow against the path of least resistance. We need to keep these jobs and businesses here. The second is we need to diversify our trade as a nation, move beyond the U.S. Over 80% of reliance on one customer clearly is insensible, and I think we've woken up as a country to this. And the third is we need to get our energy products to Tidewater and to foreign markets, and we need a serious plan with a serious national nation-building program that's going to get our resources to new markets, to Tidewater, and end the singular dependence on America, particularly when it comes to petroleum or natural gas.
So from the Ontario government's perspective, are you seeing that from Mr. Carney and what he's put on the table so far, Minister, or do you need to see more? Where are you on that?
Well, we need to see action. I mean, those early words are one thing. We now need to see action. And to be fair, we're in the early hours of this administration. We'll work in good faith with the feds. I mean, come on. We'll work in good faith with every level, whoever the people of Canada elect. I think Premier.
Anytime on a farm, they're great pride in what they do, but it's not fun. And I just want to say one thing about the pride, because that's one of the things that I know in the time that I have personally spent on farms. For the farmers who are involved in the USAID program, it is a source of income for them, but it is also a source of pride and dignity. When you travel throughout the Midwest and places like Kansas and Illinois, you've seen this when you've been out on the campaign trail, they will have signs on the side of the farms that say, "We feed the world." That is how they see themselves. And he does not understand that. He doesn't respect that aspect of their work. And I don't think, and one of the things I heard today from someone I was talking to in Minnesota said that they don't think that he respects them as entrepreneurs, as businessmen. And that's essentially what farmers are. They're businessmen, and he's messing with their money.
So his uniquely Trumpian stupidity about farming, because he knows the farmers are going to suffer very quickly on retaliatory tariffs. He said to them, you can just sell your products in the United States.
No competition.
For all of Donald Trump's lifetime and before, the United States of America has produced more food than it can eat. If we eat all day, we cannot eat that food. And the farmer knows, the grain farmers especially, commodity farmers, as you put it, know that they need those foreign markets, which Donald Trump is now cutting off to them. And that buffoon of a president thinks they can just sell it to us.
I literally laughed at that line. Tomatoes and avocados. Yes. You know, in
Minnesota.
Right.
Yeah. I laughed at that line because I was like, buddy, do you know how much soy you're talking about?
Oh, it's so much soy. He has no idea.
There's also, I mean, it's the USAID cuts, it's the tariffs. In between are the programs like the
in that tweet, they'll be respectful. They'll play a very different game to what they did in the first Trump administration. So, you know, he's actively helping Putin in Ukraine, and perhaps not deliberately, but effectively, he's helping Xi Jinping.
Is it your view that it reaches the level where Xi Jinping could, at some point, actually peel away friends of the US towards China? Could it reach that level?
Well, I think certainly not a country like Australia, obviously, but certain, you know, treaty allies, but certainly, you know, ASEAN, countries in, you know, Africa, in South America, anywhere where there is a, you know, where people are trying to be friends with both sides. If Trump abuses them, seeks to bully them, puts crippling tariffs on them, they will naturally edge closer to China. Of course they will.
There was nothing in...
Peter Baker, weigh in on this, please.
Absolutely. Vaughn's got it all right. Of course, what is striking is not only the incoherence of the messaging. On the one hand, the president says we might have a recession. On the other hand, his Commerce Secretary says no chance. One of them is going to be wrong. You have this sort of disjointed policy where trading partners and businesses don't know which way is up and which way is down. We have the tariffs on one day, we take them off the next day, we put them on this product, but not on that product. We're going to make an exemption of a 1 month pause. Very hard for businesses to do. Business, to make plans. That's what business likes. It likes predictability. And for Trump, who made the stock market a major metric of his success as he saw it in his first term, this is a remarkable turnaround. In fact, if you invested money on the day he was inaugurated, you invested, let's say, $100 in the NASDAQ, in the stocks that make up the NASDAQ across the board on his inauguration day, you've already lost 12% of your money in the 7 weeks since then. And that's just not what Trump promised. Trump promised a strong economy. He promised the greatest economy ever. And it's not clear that this transition is to something better necessarily, because as Vaughn said, it's not clear that the tariffs on our biggest trading partners of Canada and Mexico are really about economics at all. It's about fentanyl. It's about border crossings. So he's using them as a weapon in all sorts of different policy disputes. But the economy right now is on the edge as a result.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the wrinkle here, because if he was just saying, John, that this is something that needs to happen in order to rebalance the American economy, to fight back for the American worker, to bring manufacturing home. He said these things, but he's mixing it up with fentanyl and other stuff. If he just focused on this message and told the American public it's going to look ugly for a little while, very rich corporations might be, unhappy about this, but I'm going to make it better for American businesses. I'm going to make it better for American manufacturers. I mean, there are American manufacturers who are cheering this. We saw the New York Times did a great piece today on steel and aluminum owners saying this is a good thing. They need to rebalance trade, because right now what they are seeing is that no matter how low they get the price for their steel products, Canadian steel is going to undercut them. It will always be less. They can't lower the price enough. So why not just focus the message there?
Why not? That's a very good question. And look, the bottom line is this. We have had more than 30 years of trade policies that have been, in many cases, very damaging to historic U.S. industries, and particularly to some of those heavy industries that do deal in aluminum and steel. And so there's a real constituency for focusing in on those issues. You'll hear it from the unions, unquestionably. But this is not a coherent effort, at least at this point, to renew American manufacturing. What you're really seeing here is a
We must stop dirty language from getting to our children's ears. We must go fight the source of it. But what is the source?
Oh, that's easy.
Times have changed. Our kids are getting worse. They won't obey their parents. They just want to fart and curse.
Should we blame the government or blame society?
Or should we blame the images on TV?
No, blame Canada. Blame Canada. For their beady little eyes and flapping heads so full of lies. Blame Canada. Blame Canada. We need to form a full assault.
Don't blame me for my son Stan. He saw the darn cartoon and now he's off to join the clan. And my boy Eric once had my picture on his shelf, but now when I see him it tells me to fuck myself.
Well, blame Canada. Blame Canada. It seems that everything's gone wrong since Canada came along. Blame Canada. Blame Canada.
They're not even a real country anyway.
My son could have been a doctor or a lawyer in
Mexico. But when it comes to Canada, check this out. So the total pounds seized of fentanyl, almost 22,000 pounds. The northern border, 43 pounds. So it's less than 1% of the very dangerous and scary fentanyl problem. And that's the reality.
Yeah, and the thing is, you have seen Canada make some moves around this. Again, they're barely part of the problem. It is a big problem. Mexico is a really big part of the problem. And they too, Claudia Sheinbaum, even before Trump was in office, wanted to go aggressively at some of these drug cartels. She's doing that. You saw them cooperate in trying to have some of these drug warlords prosecuted. So there is something happening with this. The question, I think, for Trump is, will it be enough, or are there just going to be sort of shifting explanations for why these tariffs are happening or aren't happening?
I mean, they could say it's a drug war, not a trade war all they want, but it is a trade war.
Yeah, it is.
People will feel it. And, I'll be interested in, from my perch, watching how some of those members from northern states in Maine, the Senator Susan Collins is very concerned about the impacts on tariffs impacting the Maine economy. Wisconsin House members are concerned about the impact on the agriculture.
Even Ron Johnson.
Ron Johnson is concerned. Chuck Grassley from the Iowa members and how it will impact their farmers. So this is, yes, they could say drug war. That could be their argument to try to ease concerns, but people start feeling it, and that's going to change the dynamic.
And it's important to note, too, that one of the reasons that Canada is so upset and aggrieved over this whole thing is that even though they were a small part of the problem last year, they had already also taken significant steps to try to show Donald Trump they were doing more to police the small bit of fentanyl that was coming over their border. I mean, CBP data for January had a fraction of a single pound of fentanyl.
You have to stand up to your mother. Come on.
Gentlemen, do you have any last words?
Last words? Let's see. How's about get me the fuck out of this chair? How's that for last words?
All right, Anonymous. Ready the switch.
Wade.
Stanley.
Eric.
Kyle.
Go on, dude. Tell her. I can't. You can't kill Terrence and Phillip. If they die, Satan and Saddam Hussein are gonna come take over the world.
Throw the switch, Mr. Garrison.
Hey, I'm supposed to be anonymous.
Goodbye, bastards!
No!
The Canadians are attacking. Run for your lives.
Come on, we have to shut off the power. Ow, fuck! Hey, some little fat kid saved us. Sergeant Phillip, wait! We have to get you to the rendezvous point!
Dad, behind you!
Duh, Canadian!
Did you hear that, Terrence? I farted!
You did, just now? Terrence and Phillip! We have to get you to the rendezvous point! Hey, it's Mr. Garrison!
Children, take Mr. Hayes. Please, get him out of here.
Holy shit! Hey, this V-chip is getting all screwy! Take cover in the trench!
All right then, Human Shield up front, then Operation Get Behind the Darkest. Remember, Human Shield, protect our tanks and planes too. Holy Mother of Jehoshaphat!
Fire on my command!
All right, squad. Just like I told you. 1, 2...
You some people gonna die? Fire!
3!
What the no...
Great plan, Chef!
Operation Human Shield my ass.
We're going...
In the coming days, his most urgent task will be managing Canada's increasingly fraught relationship with the Trump White House. On Sunday, the outgoing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had this warning about relations with the United States.
As Canadians face from our neighbor an existential challenge, an economic crisis, Canadians are showing exactly what we are made of.
That comment said in reference to the US president's tariff threats and his calls to make Canada the 51st state of the United States. Martina Steves-Grednev, Canada's bureau chief at the New York Times, joins us live now from Ottawa. Martina, thank you so much for being with us. Let's talk about Mark Carney. I mean, this is a very, very accomplished individual. We're talking Harvard educated, Oxford educated, former governor of the Bank of Canada, former governor of the Bank of England, the only non-British person to have that role, by the way. He led Canada and steered Canada through the 2008 financial crisis as well. So clearly, when it comes to having economic chops, I mean, he is the man. But given what's happening with the United States right now, you really need somebody who is a talented politician. You think about how the Mexican president, Claudia Sheinbaum, has handled Donald Trump. I mean, it's been a mix of sort of being strong and firm and standing her own ground, while at the same time allowing for a diplomatic off-ramp. That seems to be the language that Donald Trump understands. How will Mark Carney, I mean, obviously he understands how to deal with this economically in terms of retaliatory tariffs. Does he have what it takes at this point, given that he has no experience in terms of elected office? Does he have what it takes to handle this diplomatically and politically?
I think it's really the most important question. And, you know, as central bank governor, Mark Carney has held public office, as you mentioned, during major meltdowns, also during Brexit when he was Bank of England governor. Those are actually political jobs. They're just not overtly political in the elected sense that we're used to. And the reality is, even though he's been in the public eye for so many years, really throughout his career, we don't know that much about him. What we do know is that he's been in the room when very difficult conversations have been held in those previous roles. His challenge really right now is not just that he needs to reboot the relationship with Donald Trump. We know that Donald Trump did not get along with Justin Trudeau, and perhaps that influenced part of the predicament the relationship is in right now. But he's also going to have to call a federal election very soon. That means he's going to have to lean into that aggressive anti-Trump, anti-US rhetoric. That's what Canada wants right now. That's what voters are looking for. But that may not play very well when he is in the room or he's on the phone with President Trump.
Exactly.
And he is promising to go toe to toe. He said that he would be prepared for a dollar for dollar retaliatory tariff. Also said he's prepared to the U.S.-Canadian exports to be tariffed as well. And Canada is the largest supplier of energy to the United States, we should note. It's interesting, the Donald Trump effect, because as accomplished as Mark Carney is, I don't know how familiar he was to every Canadian prior to the last few months. And now here you have a Liberal Party that's neck and neck with the Conservative Party, and in terms of playing to his advantage. When do you expect to see a general election called? It has to be called by October. But given how close these two parties are now in polling, do you think it will happen much sooner?
It has to happen sooner, in fact. Mark Carney does not hold a seat in Parliament. He will be sworn in as Prime Minister, but he needs to call a federal election as soon as possible. His party, the Liberals, do not command a majority in the House of Commons here in Parliament. That means that what we understand from his team, what he said to people already, our reporting shows that he will be calling a federal election. So my bets, I'm not a betting woman, is that we will have an election in the course of May. And that will mean that we are entering a very intense campaigning period. He's going to have to carry on with that energy he's built up over the last 2 months trying to secure his party's vote. But the new audience will not be the party faithful who rallied around him in such a dramatic way last night here in Ottawa. It will be the entire population who are fatigued after 10 years of Trudeau, are terrified and angry with the Trump threat. And so they'll be looking to him for real answers, and there'll be more scrutiny on him.
How seriously are Canadians taking Donald Trump's threat to make Canada the 51st state? I mean, based on what I'm seeing in terms of, comments from Justin Trudeau and Mark Carney, they are taking it extremely serious. I mean, Donald Trump went so far as referring to Justin Trudeau as governor many, many times. Take us through that.
Sure. And, I should say they're taking it deadly seriously. And they have some reason for that. Last week, we had an exclusive report in the New York Times. My sources, 4 individuals directly familiar with communications between the president and Prime Minister Trudeau, who said that in an early February phone call between the two men, President Trump, while raising trade concerns and irritants in their relationship that we know.
We didn't ask for this fight. We didn't ask for this fight. But Canadians are always ready when someone else drops the gloves. So the Americans, they should make no mistake, in trade as in hockey, Canada will win.
Ed O'Keefe and Chanel Call join us now. Ed O'Keefe is in Ottawa. Chanel is on our Studio 57 in New York. Ed, who is Mark Carney? He has a rather long history, a kind of storied history economically in Canada, stepping into an enormously important role when Canada needs and wants to push back.
I thought we were renaming the show for these few minutes Canada Decides.
Canada Decides. I think go right ahead, Ed.
Good to see. All right. Look, Mark Carney is a Harvard-educated economist who once worked for Goldman Sachs, has spent, obviously, a fair amount of time in the United States, so understands the U.S.-Canada relationship. As you point out, was head of Canada's central bank, also ran the Bank of England around the time Brexit was being voted on and taking effect. So he's got real good, solid understanding of the global economy and the effects of things like tariffs. Walloped his competition in this race for head of the Liberal Party last night with 85% of the vote, and will take the mantle from Justin Trudeau at some point later this week and become prime minister. The question at that point is, well, for how long will he be prime minister? Because he's got to call a general election anytime between the moment he becomes prime minister and October, essentially. There's some speculation here in Canada's capital. He may call it right away because his Liberal Party is catching back up to the Conservatives after they had a nearly double-digit advantage earlier this year before the president started threatening tariffs and annexing Canada, which has just infuriated Canadians all across this country with that kind of talk, and as they realize that he's getting quite serious, at least, about the tariffs.
And Chanel, for the purposes of this segment, it is Canada Decides. Ontario has decided to impose a 25% increase on electricity exports to the United States. You spoke with that province's energy minister. How much of an impact will all this have on the states targeted by this particular increase?
Well, Ontario officials may
and it's hurting families on both sides of the border. It needs to end. That's why I've been crystal clear. Until these tariffs are off the table, until the threat of tariffs is gone for good, Ontario will not relent. We will not back down. Pausing some tariffs, making last-minute exemptions, it won't cut it. We need to end the chaos once and for all. We need to sit down, work together, and land a fair deal. A deal that gives businesses the confidence to invest. A deal that gives workers the security they need and deserve. Until then, Ontario will keep up the fight. We will apply maximum pressure to
Other times I said you were a big dumb Jew. I didn't mean it. You're not a Jew. Yes, I am. I am a Jew, Cartman. No, Kyle, don't be so hard on yourself. What the hell am I still holding this for?
Mr. Hand, no!
Fuck this, dude. I'm getting out of here before I get in really big trouble. I heard that. Stan! Dude, I found the clitoris, so now I think I can get Wendy to like me again. Oh, that's swell, Stan. Yeah, I guess all's well that ends well, huh? We can go home now, you dipshit. Ow! Oh, what's wrong with this thing? Come on, we can't let Terrence and Philip die, or else the whole world's gonna end. Did you forget that your own adopted son is Canadian?
I'm doing very important things.
But, Mom, you never took the time to talk to me. Whenever I get in trouble, you go off and blame everybody else. But I'm the one to blame. Deal with me. You keep going off and fighting all these causes, but I don't want to fight her. I want my mom.
Oh, the poor little fella.
No! Holy shit, dude!
Young man, you watch your mouth.
With all the hockey hullabaloo.
And that bitch on Murray, too.
Before somebody thinks of blaming
I'm gonna say what needs to be said. Yeah, my little homie got his snot box rocked. Yeah, it hurt. Yeah, he got his TV turned off. Yeah, it hurt. Yeah, he did. But you know what, though? Part of me is to blame, and part of you is to blame. Yo, I'm so sick and tired because I shouldn't have had to put shit so colorful for y'all to recognize that we was killing us on the battlefield. It was us killing us, not them. Yeah, it hurt. Yeah, he got his TV turned off. Yeah, it hurt.
Asking my black butt, am I okay? If your white butt okay?
Sit your $5 ass down.
Lay your ass down. Thank you, Rita. Sit down.
I know. Look at that white goat. Oh, they are so cute. Oh, look, there's a black one.
Black one?
Because I'm black.